Thank you for your patience, and I bid you all a warm welcome to this third session in our ACC Career Compass journey. So, before we dive into this session, just a quick recap of what we did in the first two sessions. If many of you had been here in the first session, we just uncovered the recent developments in AI. I mean, not uncovered, honestly, everyone was well versed with it, and showcased how it could be applied to different domains such as video editing, graphic designing, coding, or something as simple as resume making. And in the session two, we dived into the finer aspects of prompt engineering and just showcased a simple example about how it could be leveraged to write cold emails, and also showcased a tool that could aid in preparing for your interviews. The proverb says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Now, there is an American version of this saying, which says, a journey of $100,000 begins with a single paper. Now, it's funny, but it's a pretty big irony. We all know that single piece of paper is a resume. Now, why do I call it an irony? If you look online, in general, on an average, a single piece of paper can hold up to 500 words. And I can already see some folks out here has already got some experience in their own domain. And if you ask some experienced person or even a hiring manager about what it could take for an individual to work at a $100,000 paying job, I think they could go on for 40, 50 minutes explaining what would be required from the candidate. Technical proficiencies, soft skills, communication, working with the team, profound in discussion, etc., etc. And I'm assuming that since all of us out here, most of us out here are doing our graduate studies, masters, most of us out here are at least 24 years of age. So what has helped us in acquiring these proficiencies is our education, our college, master's program, etc. Outside of our education, our extracurricular activities, certification, and till the extent that I believe our friend circles, our each and every social interactions with them has helped us learn tons of things, which has carved us out into a unique individuals that we are today. So assuming that we all are 24 years old, it approximately is equal to 8,400 days. And so the unique challenge is whatever we have learned in 8,400 days, we should now be writing in 500 words. Now it's a big irony, and that holds the key to our $100,000, or I mean, depending on the industry, obviously, different kinds of jobs. And do you know what is even a bigger irony? Like, I was guilty of doing this myself. When I was drafting my first resume, I asked 4 of my friends for their resumes, and I just took out bits and pieces from them and created my own resume. Now, many of you might have also done the similar thing. So even a bigger irony is that we know that this piece of paper holds key to our career. We only have 500 words to express our unique self into that piece of paper. And yet our resume just ends up being the average of the 4 resumes of our friends. And this is a general trend that even I have seen when new students come to United States and they ask me for help with the resume. What I have figured out from the resumes is, if you take a particular student, his resume would be identical to most of the resumes that are of their batchmates or that are of the people from the universities. And till the extent that even sometimes projects are same. So it could be that the experiences are different and projects are different, but then too, the technical skills that they have mentioned, the kind of business impacts that they have mentioned, all turns out to be identical. So now consider that you have a resume that's identical to almost every other applicant out there, and you are applying for a job position. Now, on an average, this is a new grad opening, and it has received, as you can see, over 1,064 applicants. So just calculating the probability that there are 1,000 identical resumes out there, what is the probability of you getting a call from this 1,000 applicants? I mean, it's a straight math. It's 1 over 1,000, which is 0.001 or 0.1%. So even if, sometimes people have asked me that they are getting a call after 100 applications, I think it's still better than the 0.1% probability that's out here. But this is some of the challenges that we have faced so far. So in today's session, we are going to cover every bits of resume building. We can already see the 3 chairs out there. We will have a special review sessions where we have hiring managers and engineering managers for companies such as Uber, Chewy, to live review the resumes that we had collected from different persons. But before going into that, I think there are many of us who have even basic questions like about the formatting of the resume or about some basic bits of the resume, or if not formatting, the things that I have seen in very common is how to write impactful points in the resume. So first of all, I will invite Adarsh Mood, who is a research engineer at NEC Laboratories and is currently conquering the frontiers of technology in his own domain and working on building self-driving cars. So I'll invite him to share with us the basic bits of resume. Please hear it for him.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Meet, for the humble introduction. So, as Meet gave you like a very nice recap of what you've seen in the previous 2 sessions. So, I have a question for everyone, right? So, in the last session, we all learned about prompt engineering. So now I have a question, okay? How many people have typed this in ChatGPT before coming to this session or any time before this? Wow, a good bunch. Okay, very interesting. So what did we learn from this, right? ChatGPT gives you a bunch of points. You follow them. That's it, done. My presentation is over. Bye-bye, I'm going. But obviously that's not the case, right? So we definitely have to dive deeper into the concepts of resume building just to figure out like the nuts and bolts of it, right? So I'll show you one resume, right? We have a good resume, we have a bad resume. I'll show you one resume, right? And we'll start from there basically, right? So if you so this is like our ideal resume. That's how we've redacted the details just for like privacy and things like that, right? So this is what most of you have seen, a resume. But what we felt when we were discussing about all of these is what is the most quintessential thing that we should do or anyone should do before even you start making your resume, right? That is role mapping. Now, in this process, we asked asked you guys to submit a lot of resumes, right? So we saw like 50 resumes, and then we realized that everyone has a similar problem. I had this problem earlier, right? That my resume caters to a bunch of bunch of roles. It is not like specialized to a particular role, right? So if you see here in this picture, right? So a resume can cater to data engineering, data analysis, software engineering, machine learning, data scientist, all of these roles. Now, where is the disadvantage here? You put that resume, so basically you would go to a job description, you open the job description, you'll see that, and you will find that, okay, something is similar in your resume, and you'll just hit apply, submit your resume, and it'll go, right? But then there'll be other candidates who've actually geared their resume to a particular role. So the first thing that we really recommend is role mapping, right? So we need to figure out, you need to go look at 10 roles and then figure out how much of a match your resume is to those roles, right? So we'll take an example. So we have an example of Bloomberg. It's a senior software engineer for a data pipeline infrastructure, right? So this is like the overall what the team does and things like that. What are they building, right? So now these are the main 2 points that you'll mostly look at, right? You'll need to have, those are like basic requirements, and then recommended requirements or recommended things that you should be able to. So we'll trust you to, right? So if you look at, if you don't match this experience level, then you should not even apply, right? A lot of, even when I was applying, I did this mistake of applying to mid-senior level roles when I was just graduating out of college, right? That is just like mindlessly applying. It will not, your resume is not going to be picked up for an entry-level person, you should apply to an entry-level role, right? So these are must-haves. If you don't know any Apache Kafka, then you should not apply to this position, basically, right? And these are good to have. So these are things that are very important. These we'll trust you to build your resume, right? These are the points that you actually want to put inside your resume. That is how your resume might get picked up, right? I have another example of the Lyft senior software engineer. Similar, these are the experience list and this is the responsibilities list. So what we would advise is like basically we should like go and see these like 5 or 10 dream job roles that you have. I've done that when I was a graduate, right? And that will give you a better clear picture of where your resume might fit. We'll come back to this point again later. So now, another point that we feel that we should do before you even start making your resume. So as Meet said, our resume is an average of 4 friends' resumes, right? So instead of like averaging out and just copy pasting from people's experiences, what I think we should do is compile a list of our own experiences. Just write bullet points. This is a very preliminary, this is not the final version of your resume, but just write like simple 4 or 5 points of things what you've done and compile a list of such experiences. If you're not graduated, if you don't have experience, then please write academic projects. If there are, I think a lot of us will be master students, right? So we have capstone projects. Even undergrad students have capstone projects in their final year, right? So we can write projects off of that as like projects on our resume. We'll see that also later. So another question that people have is design, right? What kind of design should my resume look like? So with design, less is more, basically, right? There is a thing called an ATS software, right? So now people will be like, okay, what is ATS? So I'll tell you what ATS does, and then we'll go into the details of what really ATS does behind. But ATS scans your resume like from top to bottom and left to right, like how humans read, right? So any fancy design like 2 columns or things like that won't work because the ATS will not be able to scan it properly, right? Another question, 1-page or 2-page resumes, right? So I think the general convention here is if you're under 5 years of experience, I think 1 page, I'm under that. I still have a 1-page resume. I don't have 2 pages of resume, right? If you're above 5 years, then maybe you can go for a 2-page resume, right? So now, what is ATS? So we need to understand, right? So I think Meet Bhai would have glanced over this topic. So we saw a snapshot, right, of a software engineer position with 1,000 applications, right? So basically, the ATS is like the first gate that your resume has to go through. There are 1,000 resumes on one particular job application. Out of that, the ATS will remove over 900, right? And then the top 100 of those will go to a recruiter. A recruiter will see those 100 resumes. And out of those 100 resumes, a recruiter might call 10 or 15 people, right? And then out of that, 5 might get interviews and then 1 will get the job, right? So you have to basically beat this software, which is application tracking system, right? So as I told you, it scans from top to bottom, left to right, and what it does is basically it just scans your resume and populates a GUI that is in the backend of that system, right? So what a recruiter sees is their own developed tool or a software that basically reads or parses all this information from your resume and then gives them in sections. Okay, how much experience does he have? How many experiences? Where did he go to school? And things like that. What is his contact information? So it's easier for them to track applications and keep track of applicants, right? And how they rank the applications is using a Boolean search, right? So I guess a lot of us might be computer science students. So what they do is basically what we looked here, right? So this job description that they have posted, it does a Boolean search between this and your resume that you've submitted. And then it will throw the results that have the highest percentage of match between these 2 documents. That's as like dumb as it gets. Maybe like now I feel with ChatGPT and AI-based systems, ATS software will get better over the period of time. But then right now, what has been reported online or what people say who use ATS is this. So we have to get on that top 10% ranking list. So that's why having things very clearly in your resume and matching the job description is kind of the first step that you would go to in selecting your resume for an interview, right? So again, 2 column, 1 column. So I remember, so there is this, when I was studying, there was this DD resume, yeah. So this GitHub, if you see, it has 4.7 stars, right? It is a very famous resume, and it looks like this, a 2-column resume, right? Now, he's very famous on social media everywhere. I don't know who might have heard of them, but he famously got a job in Google and Facebook using that kind of a 2-column resume. Now, the funny thing is that when we thought about it, it's like his resume didn't get him his job. The experience or the work that he did get the job, right? So a simple resume can also get you a job. You don't need to have a fancy resume, right? 2-column resumes work if you are giving it to someone on hand. But most of our applications are online and they will go through an ATS software. If that's the case, I would not risk it for a 2-column resume. I would just make a 1-column resume where it just gets parsed correctly, at least all of my information, right? So now all the preliminaries are checked right now. And now we are like, I'm going to give you like 5-6 points that we are going to discuss here using these resumes. And then like these are the main impact points that we felt that, will really make your resume shine out of the 1,000 resumes, right? So the first thing, always write specific statements. Don't write generic statements. Okay, now what do I mean by that? One second. Yeah. So we'll go to our good resume and our bad resume now. So in my bad resume, so you guys can read this, right? So read the yellow line. Developed ETL pipeline using Python and Go optimizing the flow of data, right? Sounds like a very vague and a very like, okay, you've used Python and Go to do something, but what have you done? It is a very generic statement. Anyone can write this. This will not make your resume shine. This will not make your resume unique. This will not stand out, right? So what you can do instead of this, let's go to the good resume. Be specific and give more details, right? So designed and developed ETL data pipelines using Python, Go, and AWS services to fetch and serve data from 18 different sources to Elasticsearch, right? So this is very clear, right? So you're pulling in data from 18 different sources, you're putting it into Elasticsearch, and you've made this ETL pipeline using Python and Go, and the whole thing is hosted on AWS. It gives so much more context. This is what will make your resume shine, So never use generic statements. Always use very specific, statements. Then the next thing, focus on results and metrics, right? So here, like, we had like very funny responses that we even saw in the resumes that we collected. But even I'm guilty of doing this, right? So you can see, let's go to the bad resume. So achieved response time reduction by 25% by asynchronous and parallel processing within the server, right? So everyone likes to use percentages so much, but there are a few caveats here, right? So the first point, the first like thing that we observed is people make up just like this point is so common that everyone wants to have some result or metrics on the resume that people just make up metrics, right? So or if you can't make up, then you just say some percentage has been improved, right? So achieved response time reduction by 25%. Instead of that, we can write achieved response time reduction by 273 milliseconds, right? So this is an actual quantifiable, unit of measure that I can say that, okay, this is, if your hiring manager who's working in the same field, he will understand this and he will appreciate you for the uniqueness that you're offering in your resume, right? So again, let's go to the second one, right? So improved relevance algorithm, improving search relevance by 25%, right? This is again very vague. You cannot quantify search relevance like that, right? Then you have external API licenses contributing to 4 million, 4 million in yearly revenue, right? So people do this. They like blow up numbers, exaggerate numbers too much. You might not have, like, I don't know how much like exact business. I might have a ballpark figure, but then, just throwing those off in the resume will not, probably create a lot of impact, right? So, so again, for improved relevance, we can say something like which caters more results for improving click-through rates, right? So from 18% to 72%, right? So how do you actually measure search relevance, right? So a search relevance is measured by a click, right? So someone has clicked on that link, and that's how your search was more relevant than others. So you can say that, okay, that has increased from 18% to 72%, means you have more clicks. That will give you more context, give people more context. Now, okay, the third point. So tell a story, right? Everyone likes to hear a story. We can have, like, in the bad resume, we have a very good example here. So I've just like, this is like basically a list of activities that we've done, right? So develop web application using something, develop Unity game something, design and develop Unity games using something, incorporated Unity games with something, and perform research, right? So this is very bad. This does not give you the whole picture. This is as generic and not a lot of meaning is portrayed through this. What I would do is basically, the first line of the resume, like we usually use 3 or 4 points, right? So the first point that you would put is define the problem in such a way that any person outside can understand this point, right? So you can, the first point is basically defining the problem as simply as you can. What is the context? Not everyone are in the same field. Your recruiter might not understand what you're talking about, right? And the recruiter is the first person that you have to kind of convince. So the first point is define your problem. The second point will be specifics, details. You can give out what you did, what skills you learned, or maybe what technologies you used, what was the innovative solution that you came up with to solve this challenging problem, right? And the third and the fourth point can be results. What were the outcomes? What was achieved out of this innovative solution, and the impact what it created within your company, right? So everyone likes to see this. You might have heard there's a famous STAR method. So it kind of goes with this flow, right? So tailor to the job description. Now, this is, again, very interesting. And I don't know if people do this often, but this is what I've done. So this is my resume, actually. The good and bad versus sample resumes. So I have basically, so this is not the resume that goes in. I submit a single page resume. But what I'm trying to say is I have 5 set of experiences and like 4 set of academic projects, right? And I swap them out for every job role. You can even have 2 different descriptions of the same project or 2 different descriptions of the same experience. How this will help, right? So what I mean by, so this is what we do, right? In the process, we find a job posting, read the job description, we hit apply, right? What we want to change is modify your resume, right? So you look at a job description, you figure out what points are more relevant. What can you edit in your resume, right? In my case, I apply to like 3 posts: computer vision engineer, robotics engineer, and then research engineer, right? So if I have more of, if the job posting is research engineer, I might have more research. Then if the job posting has more computer vision, I'll put more of those projects, so on and so forth, right? So this is very important because if you don't like modify or cater your resume to the job description, you will not get a call back, basically, right? So Now, the final thing is use power words, action words. This is also, I guess, pretty common that we should write our resume in third-person view. I had in undergrad, like 6-7 years ago, I have made that mistake of writing everything as I have done this, I have done that, or you don't use that, right? You have to use action words like led, designed, things like that, right? Implemented or innovated this or something like that. Now the problem is that I've come from India. My English was not good, or I feel it's still not good, right? This is where ChatGPT I feel comes in, very helpful. So a year back I did this where I have my resume here. So this is the new resume actually. Okay. So these are like prompts. So I just gave ChatGPT a very simple prompt that can you please help me rewrite this paragraph of work experience in my resume, right? And I just blindly fed it all the paragraphs one by one. So I'll just give you an example of a really good example that I found was completely changed by ChatGPT. So yeah, this one. So here it says 3 points I had written. So worked on generating high fidelity 3D face models using a face swap video from a smartphone in a completely unconstrained setting, right? What it gives me is spearheaded the development of advanced 3D face models from unconstrained smartphones. Just the language is crazy. So I feel ChatGPT can be very well utilized for writing aspects. I honestly felt that my writing was not as good as ChatGPT's writing, and if you just feed in information, it will try to make a very good sentence, a sentence that will make sense, right? And with good language, using all these words in the correct manner. So this is what I've personally experienced, and I found out that, okay, this is how power words and just simple sentence formation and grammar can be improved using ChatGPT. So these are all the points, basically. I might have skipped one or two, but yeah, you guys can take a note if you want to. I feel the first 3 points were kind of the main gist of this presentation. Don't write generic statements. Focus on real metrics. Don't make up metrics. Don't round off metrics. We even saw everything is rounded up, right? In metrics, you'll see everything is 10%, 20%, 50%. Why can't you write 36% or 72%, something like that, right? Be more specific. I feel it, hiring managers are not dumb. They have been through this whole process, right? So they are very intelligent people. They will understand what you've made up and what you've not, right? So finally, these are tools that we found useful. There were these AI resume builders called Teal and Resi. You can probably look them up. The caveat here is they're paid softwares. But yeah, if you're getting $100,000 job, spending like $20 or $30 for a software for a month might not be such a bad idea. No one gave me this perspective earlier, but now I have it. But basically, the gist is you can go to them. They will do very similar things. What we've said, things like keyword match, and they will ask for a job description from the beginning and things like that, right? What I personally have used is Overleaf and ChatGPT. I just write in Overleaf. I don't know if so how many people are familiar with Overleaf here, right? Fair bunch. It's like HTML. It's very easy. You can figure it out online. So I've made my resume in Overleaf, and I just use ChatGPT to modify all the statements and things like that, right? If you don't want to spend anything, you can scan this QR code. There is a sample doc template in Google Doc. It's a very simple resume, but I feel this is all that anyone would need just to start resume building. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Well, I thank Adarsh Bhai for stepping up here and sharing these basic bits of resume. So this whole presentation was crafted after, I know many of us might have received the link about sharing the resumes if they want to get it reviewed. So after reviewing a lot of those resumes, the things that we found out were generally missing is the things that were highlighted in this presentation as well. Like many of us have a pretty good education in our colleges now and get the art of making resume almost right. I mean, just one question. How many of us out here have used VMock or some similar sort of platform? Okay, many of us. And how many of us have scores of above 75 or 80 on those platforms? Right, many of us. And like in general, even when I was out of my grad school, I had this similar questions where I used to use this similar tools. And I had this question that I have a score of above 80 on these platforms and still I'm not getting a call. How many of you like have similar questions? If you can showcase your hands. Okay, fair amount of them. So the thing is, using action words or putting in the metrics, we are starting to get the art right. But there is something missing that's not getting us the calls. There is something missing that's just skipping the eyes of hiring manager. So just to summarize whatever Adarsh shared about, first, map your role and map your resume according to your own role. Then with design, less is better. So use single page, no 2-column layout, and then he shared a bunch of tips about how to make an impactful resume. Never use generic points, putting in the right metrics, not putting in the fake metrics, those kind of stuff, telling a story, and then tailoring it to the specific job description. So those were all helpful. But there is still something that we make errors with. Just one last question. How many of us here have got their own resumes reviewed by actual hiring managers? Just rough show of hands. Okay, few of them. So today I would like to thank Atmiya Charities, Hari Sumaran Temple, and also with the grace of Guru Hari, we have few bhaktos out here who are hiring managers themselves and who have volunteered to do this service. So, one by one, I will just invite them and share the backgrounds with you. So we have with us here Mayank Patel, who is himself an engineering manager at Uber. And just by the name of the company, one can imagine the kind of projects and the impact of projects he must be creating. And he has hired a bunch of resumes and reviewed those resumes. So let's hear it for him. Next, I would like to invite Mihir Mehta, who is himself an engineering manager at a company called Chewy. And again, lastly, with the latest trend going, many of us are applying for machine learning positions, but there is hard to find someone in this. So we have with here Krutharth Majithia, who is a lead machine learning engineer with First Dibs. So before we go into this, we had asked all of you for your resumes, and many of you have sent your resumes our way. And all of the personal information is redacted, so we also don't know which resume belongs to whom. But in general, when hiring manager is looking towards a resume, the hiring manager is looking to hire a candidate. He's not looking for points to fire a candidate. He's looking for points that makes him feel like if he wants to hire this candidate or not. But today in this event, we have requested our panel to give the critical feedback about where they think our resumes are missing out. And it might be that we have handpicked only 2 or 3, but the trends sort of generalize across the resumes. And now there is also one kind request on my behalf to our audience out here is, we have requested the panels to give the frank feedback, not sugarcoat them, because in general, we have seen this trend. In sugarcoating, we sometimes miss out the essence. Now, it's just a request on my behalf to, not feel discouraged if your own resume comes up here and, there is some critical feedback being shared. But take it in the good spirit that this is your chance to actually get it reviewed by the hiring manager and learn about how it can be improved. So with that set aside, can we have the resumes on the screen? So firstly, we'll ask Mihir Bhai. So we have one resume that we had received for software engineering domain. So just while the iPad is being set up, we have handpicked 3 resumes here. One is for the software engineering domain, for the front-end engineering, and another one is for data analysis or data science specific position. So I think this covers majority of the audience out here. So most of the domain specific stuff might also be relevant to one of you guys. So yeah, I'll just hand it out to Mihir Bhai to share whatever his reviews are about this resume. And also, like, while he's sharing, after this session, we'll be having a live question answering. So if you have certain questions, which can also help out other people out here, just keep them with yourself, and we'll be sharing mic with the people if they want to ask any questions to our panel.
Thank you, Midbhai. So, when we hire software engineers, and if I were to get this resume, what would be my feedback? First of all, I would start from the top. The very first thing that comes out of this resume is GPA. Ideally, it is recommended if you have GPA 3.5 or 3.6 and above, you put that on the resume. It's not required for you to put GPA on the resume if it is less than 3.5, because just from visual point of view, or if I were to assess your personality, it would mean to me that you haven't done well in your academics, right? So the first recommendation is if the GPA is less than 3.5, it's not required for you to put it here on the resume. Second thing, on this resume, the candidate has listed coursework for BS in Computer Science and Software Engineering. Resume is the first and the last chance to present yourself and impress hiring manager so that they can hire you. So you have to be very wise what you put on this resume, because every line that you are putting in counts. So here, if I am seeing, there is too much redundant information in the coursework. There are few courses that are listed in MS and the same courses are listed in BS. That's not going to give you any legit advantage. You can have it in one and you can skip it in another. That's okay. If we come down, this resume that I'm reviewing right now is for software engineering position. So one thing that is good about this resume, if you see, it's very well formatted. I really like the formatting. It's very clear, it's very crisp. It has the information I'm looking for from structural and formatting point of view. However, if I go inside skills, and let's say if I'm hiring a software engineer who is required to have Java, or let's say who is required to have Python, in that case, visually, when we read resumes, we go from left to right. So if you see here in languages and databases, this candidate has started with Python, then he goes to JavaScript, TypeScript, which are more on front-end side. Then he comes back to Java, which is on back-end side. That does not give me clarity if he is applying for front-end position, back-end position, or full-stack position. So things that you are excelling in, or things that is required in position, should come first. And things that you are less experienced with, or is not required for positions, you can push it towards the right. Because ideally when I read it, I go 2-3 skills and then I go down, right? I don't have time to read all the skills that is listed in the resume. Also, let's say if this candidate is applying for software engineering position that is Python heavy. Let's say it requires more experience on Python side. One recommendation or one expectation or one thing that I was impressed with one of the resumes that I was reviewing in my company, that candidate had the skill saying Python, and in bracket, he also listed the proficiency. Like in this case, Python advanced, something like that. Like I know Python and I know Python with the proficiency of advanced, or it can be intermediate. Anything less than intermediate, you don't have to put. Again, this proficiency is only required for key skills that is required in that position. It's not expected to put for all the skills that are been listed here. Second, if I am reviewing this resume for software engineering position, I would think, is this really required? MS Excel, MS Word, MS PowerPoint, MS Office, Blender. Answer is no. I never expect a software engineer who is going to work in my team. It's like it goes by default that he should know PowerPoint, he should know Word, right? So using your critical space in resume with skills that does not matter much, try to avoid it. Because the last we should use resume is to fill up spaces with some skills that does not matter. So this is actually not required. One last thing here, it says other skills. If I am interviewing someone for our software engineering entry-level position, again, I'm reviewing this for someone who is entry-level or mid-entry level. I do not expect them to have leadership. I do not expect them to have management. I do not expect them to have teamwork. This goes by default. I do not expect them to put or tell me in resume that they know problem solving. It goes by default that you should know problem solving if you are applying for software engineering position. So things that are by default, do not explicitly put it because you're wasting the critical space, right? As a software engineer, you should know problem solving. Let's go to the most exciting part, experience. Just to be little harsh, from the very first sight that I looked at this resume looks fake. It looks very fake because there should be a limit on how much you should exaggerate. I will tell you why this is fake, right? And usually we think, because even I was thinking the same when I was applying, right? Like you should over exaggerate, but there is a limit of over exaggeration, right? In this case, why I can make out it's fake is this particular person is applying for software engineering one position. Within 3 months, he was promoted to lead software engineer. Within 3 months, he guided and mentored 10 plus interns. He successfully onboarded 20 qualified professionals and he collaborated with CEO. If this is true, then I'm not qualified enough to review this resume because he is really overachiever, right? But this looks fake, right? As a software engineer, one position, you are actually not expected. And the way promotion cycles currently work, for you to get promoted from software engineering 1 to software engineering 2, it takes 2 years, right? And Mayank Bhai and Krutad Bhai can add more and correct me if that's not true, but it takes 2 years for you to get your first promotion. It takes 3 to 4 years for you to get to second promotion. As you move up the ladder, it takes more time for you to get promoted. It does not come easy. So this person, this candidate is saying that he was promoted to lead software engineer in just 3 months, does not make sense. Collaborating with CEO, mentoring 10 plus interns, and onboarding 20 plus qualified candidates. No, it's a big no. Do not do that. Second, if I am looking at a software engineer resume, I would like to have a candidate that can make impact. If I read these 6 points, nowhere I am able to find out what impact did he make. When I say impact, it should be in this format that implemented X using Y resulting in Z. That's an impact statement, right? Like if I'm looking for someone, if you really did something, you would put things in that format. Like I implemented software efficiency, or I implemented or reduced something by 30% using this particular software by doing this particular thing. Nowhere in this resume I'm able to get that impact statement. As a software engineer, entry level or mid-entry level, nobody expects you to do hiring for 20 candidates. Nobody expects you. So is this points really required? Answer is no. Because as a software engineer one, you are expected to come, you are expected to code, and you are expected to collaborate at some level. But hiring or improving the interviewing process by 50% is too much of exaggeration, because there are tools in market that cannot achieve 50% reduction in hiring speed, and this guy says that he did it. This does not make sense to me, right? So again, having that impact statement, having explanation of the project that you did, what was that project about, right? Giving that context would help me understand more what this candidate wants to do or what this candidate is passionate about doing it, right? So impact statements, project information, skills that you have used, and some results that you have achieved, right? How did you contribute to that company by doing this particular thing, right? Like, how did you contribute to that particular company by doing something? So that was one thing that is missing in this particular resume. If I go down, one thing that is missing here, this candidate explained about Flutter project here, and the similar project is explained here, right? It's not going to make any impact. I would rather have an entry-level software engineer to add hackathons if they have participated in, add certifications if they have participated in, rather than duplicating the skill set in the projects that are listed here, right? So overall, there are too many changes that is required, right? To have hackathons, to have some certifications, to showcase the skill set. If I am a hiring manager, I wouldn't select this particular candidate for all these reasons that I have listed. I would now hand it over to Mayank Bhai to go over the next resume.
So this is a resume for someone, I guess, with five or 6 years of experience working in the front-end industry. Specialized as a React engineer. That's what it feels like. So let's start reviewing this resume. Overall, like, good job in summarizing the resume and putting all the information. Yeah. Good job in summarizing all the information in a single page and covering multiple projects, right? So that's great. One thing that I like is that they have a summary of their experience on the top of the resume. But if I look at the whole resume, the summary and the skills at the bottom, there is a significant overlap. So in that case, I'll just make the summary as 1 or 2 lines and then move the skills to the up so that it highlights the critical skills that I want to highlight in my resume. Going further, I see that the candidate worked on 3 different projects. And looking at these 3 projects, I know that their role is front-end engineer, but then I don't know anything about the company or the project that they worked on. So if you have a good experience, I would recommend like having 1 or 2 lines explaining what the company or the project is about so that I can take the rest of the points and put that into the context. Going further, there are a couple of flags that I noticed in the resume. So I'll try to speak about a few of them. As a theme in the resume, what I see is that there are a lot of metrics which are captured, which is great. But then, do those metrics align with the statements that are quoted in here? For example, utilized version control and bug tracking system to ensure high quality results and keep the team updated, resulting in 30% decrease in bug resolution time and 20% reduction in code conflicts. Code conflicts, maybe, but then like how can we attribute 30% of decrease in bug resolution time to bug tracking system? That's hard to digest. So that's something which I would challenge. Collaborated with cross-functional teams to deliver high-quality user experience, contributing 15% user satisfaction. User satisfaction and 10% increase in project efficiency. So user satisfaction and project efficiency, these are really hard outcomes to measure. They are not metrics by themselves. If you were to capture metrics about user engagement or user satisfaction, you would probably look at CSAT score, which is like customer satisfaction survey, or you'll look at the behavior of the users on site, which is like click-through rate, time spent on the website, and how much they engage with the content overall, or what is the rate of repeat visits. So these are good metrics to quote, but if I look at user satisfaction, that's the outcome that I'm thinking about. It's not a metric. And that is not something that can be measured. Refactored existing components to leverage features of the latest version of React.js, resulting in 25% code maintainability. This is a very difficult thing. Code maintainability by itself is, again, not a metric. What you can probably quote here is that time to develop features, if you are able to measure that and say that, okay, it increased the time to market to develop new features faster, or quote some numbers on that, that is acceptable. The number of features delivered per month or per quarter by engineers, that's a good metric to measure. If you are using Git, then number of PRs or diff count is another factor which can contribute to this. Second project, again, like I observed some of the similar things where we are trying to say 40% increase in user engagement and 20% increase in website load times. Okay, so again, some of these metrics are getting repeated project across project, which means that it's limited set of metrics or parameters that the developer is thinking about, and it's just to fill in the gaps. One other major thing that I saw in the second project is designed and developed efficient user interaction screens using HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, JSON, and whatnot. Again, like if you are in a front-end industry, lot of modern React applications, people don't use jQuery. So don't throw in technologies which are conflicting with the primary goals. And think about what are the technologies that work well with each other so that you can put a better case. Again, like for someone with 5 years of experience or anyone with more than 2 years experience, I don't think drag and drop is a big feature. So this is a feature which is highlighted in this resume. So what it says is that implemented advanced features, keyword advanced, features of drag and drop using React Draggable. That's a big no-no. Like one, drag and drop is not a big deal. Second, using a library just to implement drag and drop is again something that you should think twice about, especially when you are trying to claim that you reduced the page load time by 30%, right? So the next point here is that React Redux architecture with ES6 Webpack to transform applications into single-page applications. Again, single-page applications by default are a bit heavy compared to simple static websites. So if you are trying to claim that you improved the page performance time by 30%, you need to fact-check yourself. So think about these contradictory statements that you are making in the resume, and sometimes that can work against you. I think the next project, again, a decent job in explaining the features, but this is one more, the same feedback over, which is check your metrics. Again, if we can see that it's like 15% in user engagement. So if you're trying to get some benefits for improving page load performance, think about what other things can you throw in, which is like code splitting or using incremental renders or optimizing images, some of these techniques which can help you to reduce the page load time, because that is what hiring managers are looking for. If I were to give a complicated problem, what techniques does this developer know which can help to solve the problem? I think that's most of the feedback with this particular resume.
So the most popular field in the 21st century, data science and machine learning. Everyone is applying. I think the example that Adarsh took was for a new grad position at Pinterest. 1 week in and it had 1,000 applicants. People from math background, engineering, computer science, MIS, analytics are all applying. And trust me, it is true that even cashiers at McDonald's are also applying for the jobs. I'm not joking though. So as you've seen, that all the resumes that we have taken here, the formatting is top-notch. The feedback is on the content as we go section by section. So when you just take a swift look at this resume, very good formatting, very well written. I believe that when it would be submitted, it would be parsed correctly. So I'll start from the top. 4.0 GPA, congratulations. But there's no GPA in the other two. So either, one thing is uniformity. Either you put GPA in all three, or you don't put your GPA, it's fine. Most of the companies, they only have 3.0 as the requirement for internship. I don't think that they even ask for full-time. Relevant coursework, very well written. Coming to the technical skills. So this section itself is very clunky. It's cluttered. There's an analytics language, like Mihir Mehta mentioned, that if you're a beginner, you don't need to put it. So our language here has been put, which is not required. If you're a beginner, then what are you actually contributing? Python required because you're kind of mostly doing the job in Python. Then C, C++, Java, again, it's not required, then don't put it. Coming to the database management, MySQL, MongoDB, Postgres, any one is fine. So it is assumed that in data science or in machine learning, if you have expertise in one, those skills are transferable. You don't need to explicitly mention it. It is assumed that if you're, for example, you know one cloud technology, AWS, there's no need to mention Azure and GCP. It's like Army, Navy, and Air Force. You can be expert in one, not all three. Same goes for this, Linux, Windows, and Mac. So let's think from the hiring manager's point of view. How is knowing Linux or Mac or Windows contributing or telling the hiring manager that you're a great data scientist or a machine learning engineer? It's not. Same goes for software tools. So these are okay, but whether I use PyCharm or VS Code, that's my personal preference. It's not a skill. Okay? Git, Jira, fine. That's okay. But this and virtualization, so Docker, the right term is containerization, which is now used in MLOps a lot. This resume is interesting because as per the format, the experience comes later and the academics and personal projects come first. So I don't know the person, but it is understood that this person is trying to break into the field of data science and has experience which is not relevant, but wants to get into a data science or machine learning role, and hence has put the projects on the top. So I took this resume, I did my homework, I put it into ChatGPT, and I asked that what role would you recommend for this resume? And ChatGPT actually gave me 7 answers based on the experience, based on the projects. Now, if the diversity is so much, which means that as a hiring manager, I won't be able to pinpoint what your true skills are. But regardless, the first project, document summarization, hackathon project, so a very good thing to put on your resume. Good thing, but there is no metric, there is no impact. So designed a user-friendly interface for inputting documents. Customizing summarization parameters, and interacting with generated summaries. So if it's a hackathon, I believe that there would be a team that would be winning, or there would be a leaderboard. Now, what's the metric for the leaderboard? If you're summarizing a document, it means that how good your summary is. How would you write that? So for document summary, there is a thing called BLEU score. It tells you that how close it is to a human understanding. So that thing isn't mentioned here. Second, the libraries for transformers is, I believe, Hugging Face or whatever they've used. So this hackathon, in my mind, is summarized as using pre-trained weights and applying them on a data that was already given to you. So where is the effort? Where is the complexity? Where is the metric? I'm not able to gauge. I'm pretty sure that this project must have been really complex, must have been putting a lot of work, but it is not being shown through the resume. Second, movie recommendation system and sentiment analysis. So it's like a two-in-one project. Most of the times, these two projects are separate. So movie recommendation systems, a recommender is, so a TLDR version, any project is measured by two things. One is the offline metrics, which is like accuracy, AUC, RMSE, mean reciprocal rank, whatever it is, and the online metrics, which is the number of clicks. So now when we do the movie recommendation system, the data is already, data has been scraped, but the recommendation, there is a content recommendation system, cosine similarity. But how are we measuring whether is it a good recommendation or not? So again, here the measurement is missing. Second, we've used NLP models. So which models? Deploying the model with UI over cloud AWS Beanstalks. So how are people interacting with this? Are they putting in reviews? What is the input? What is the output? That is missing. Third thing, I would like to put an exclamation mark here. For anyone trying to break into machine learning or data science, there are 3 projects which are red flags. Titanic machine learning dataset, MNIST dataset, and housing prediction. These projects are such that the libraries have made this data available. So anyone can use the data from that is publicly available. There are over 100,000 GitHub repositories with these projects. So now when I see this, I will automatically reject it because I don't know whether you have copied it, whether you have done on your own. Third, 30K data entries. This was an attempt to convey complexity, but any data that can be fit into memory is the same. So whether it can be 30K or 300K is the same for me because it's pandas.read_CSV. So it's the same. 3 ML techniques, linear regression, random forest, and XGBoost. So now if it's an end-to-end ML pipeline, it's understandable that you're going to use ML algorithms. But which one did you use for deployment if it's an end-to-end pipeline? I don't know that. And why did you use it? How did you optimize model performance? What metrics did you use? And if it's an end-to-end ML pipeline, then getting data is also part of the pipeline. So very quick tip, the biggest question is how to break into data science when we have no experience. The sad answer is that the college coursework won't cut it. We have to go beyond that. We'll have to show an end-to-end ML pipeline, but that in a way that can convey real-life work experience with metrics and proper impact. Coming to the experience, this experience is actually really good. Really good. But I won't go too much into detail. But it has been written in a way, it can be written in a way that can tie to the ML ops. So this part, ML ops is a big thing. For any machine learning engineer, it is sort of mandatory now. And continuous integration, continuous deployment is a very big asset. If you know containerization, if you know how to use CI/CD pipelines or build CI/CD pipelines, it is a big asset. Second, as a junior software engineer, if you have used R language, then this part here, as a beginner, is contradictory. So if you have used R, it is assumed that you are at least proficient in R or intermediate in R. So now I will question its authenticity. And this experience is not relevant to ML engineering, but any experience that you have, for ML engineering, you're a software engineer first. You're building systems that runs ML in the backend. So any software engineering experience that you write, it can be written in the format which our two panelists explain, and that will be considered for ML engineering jobs. For data science, just like I said, the things that are missing, the experience is there, but I don't get any clear picture on how complex the projects are, what is the contribution, what is the impact, and how can you be an asset to any data science team. So this is it for the summary of this resume. And I would at last like to point out that there are some grammatical errors in this too, which I won't highlight it, but just ensure that once your resume is done, read it thoroughly, and if you want, you can use other tools to verify it. But there are grammatical, okay, let me just point it out. So implemented a content-based recommendation system that uses cosine similarity to build similar movies, and sentiment analysis, user reviews, web scraping from Wikipedia. So that's a very small error, but it still stands out in the first go. So just ensure that there are no typos, no grammatical error. Format is great, but it does not convey anything to me for data science. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all the panelists. They were pretty brutal, right? I mean, but that's how hiring managers look at our resumes. Now, I had told that we'll be taking questions, but since we also have a Samanvay youth meet after this and we are running on tight schedule, what we can rather do is following this session, there will be 5 minutes break. So all of these panelists will request them to be in the lobby right here, and people can just go out there, interact with them with their questions. And finally, to summarize and conclude, I think it was pretty good to look at how actual humans look at our resumes, what are the technical details they look at, and all the other stuff. And there is this thing, ultimately, if the hiring manager fills the nick for that candidate, the hiring manager would ask to interview that candidate. Now, it could be some aspect of the resume that can get the tick, or it could be any random element. But one good takeaway as well is, and what Guru Hari Prabodh Swamiji also advised, is to pray before make applications. So like before making applications, we could pray for a minute or two before making all the applications. And because ultimately, if the hiring manager fills the nick for us, then they will ask us for an interview. So with that, I would like to conclude today's session, and I hope you all found it to be helpful and for your own resumes. And I wish that you could craft your own resume that could help you in your career. And we thank all the panelists and ask them to be present here in the lobby. So with this, we can take our break and see the panelists in the lobby.